Hello and welcome to everybody to this taught postgraduate session, Q&A session for all different courses and programmes at the University of Glasgow in the College of Arts and Humanities. So my name is Adele Redhead. I'm a senior lecturer in information studies and I'm also the Deputy Dean with responsibility for PGT or postgraduate taught study. And I'm joined here today by three of our students, and together hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have about studying in Glasgow or Glasgow itself, or perhaps particular programmes. So we're really looking forward to getting some questions that we can discuss. So I'm going to allow our students to introduce themselves. So we'll go first to Amelia. Amelia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're studying, please?
Hi, I'm Amelia and I'm studying film curation at the moment.
Okay, smashing. Thank you. So next we'll go to Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm doing a postgraduate taught degree in ancient cultures.
Okay, thank you. And finally, last but not least, we'll go to Claire.
Hello, I'm Claire and I'm a postgraduate student on the MLit Creative Writing programme.
Okay, that's smashing. Thank you very much. And whilst we wait for the questions to come through, then I wondered if I could ask you, none of you did your undergraduate degree at Glasgow, did you? So you're all comparatively new to Glasgow as a university and as a city. So I wondered if you could tell me what the best thing about Glasgow as a city is. So we'll go first to you, Christina, please.
This is probably a very American answer, but I love the architecture. I love how beautiful everything is. I don't have castles or cathedrals or like a university that looks like it's straight out of Harry Potter where I'm from. So it's very exciting just to walk around and get to see all the beautiful buildings and see all the history just like all around.
Yeah, I totally agree from a non-American perspective. Actually, I think the architecture in Glasgow is absolutely amazing. I noticed that when I'm walking through the city centre, you always have to look up. There's so many amazing, beautiful things, but up high on the building. So you need to sort of pay attention and look up as well as looking at your eye level. So I do love Glasgow's architecture. And the campus itself, we are so fortunate to have such a beautiful campus where we have the old, the sort of Harry Potter building, so the big old Victorian mock Gothic main building right next to some really modern state-of-the-art facilities. It's wonderful. So I'll come next to you, Amelia. Best things about Glasgow?
I think just the amount of kind of like art-related events that are happening. There's a lot of film festivals, kind of smaller short films festivals, or like there is a Glasgow Film Festival happening at the moment as well, which is a bigger one. There's a lot of exhibitions, great galleries, a lot of music gigs as well. So it's great if you just want to like explore a local art scene. Yeah.
Yeah, the art scene in Glasgow is absolutely fantastic. We're really lucky. So both within the university itself, then there are sort of concerts both from the university and also in the two student unions that we have. But also the citywide art scene is really wonderful. So Claire, what do you think the best bits of Glasgow are?
Well, this may sound like a strange answer. I mean, Glasgow itself is a very beautiful, vibrant city, but I think what's outside of Glasgow is some of the best bits, is that you have all of the convenience and fun of being in a city, and then you are a short train ride away from Loch Lomond and the mountains and the beach. So I spend most of my free time outside of Glasgow, but it's because I don't drive, but I'm able to access all of these amazing mountains and the Trossachs just through the public transport here. And you don't get that in many places. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and we've got a really good network of public transport in Glasgow itself. We might talk a bit about that in a moment. But for now, I am having a look at the comments and questions which are coming in from the chat. So see a few people who are already from Glasgow here. So hello to those of you joining from Glasgow, but also a very special hello to those of you who are joining from further afield. If you've visited Glasgow before, we'd be really interested to see what you think the best bits about Glasgow are in the chat. So please do feel free to post that, and we might read some of them out if we have some time. But just coming to a few questions. So there's a question from Erin, saying that she's having difficulty deciding between a few programs and if there's any sort of admissions counsellor or faculty member that you could speak with to decide. I don't know where you're coming from, Erin, and I think this is quite a common thing, that we have lots of programs in the University of Glasgow, and especially lots of amazing programs in the College of Arts and Humanities available for taught postgraduate students. So how do you decide which one exactly is for you? And I'd say the good tip is, first of all, find out everything that you possibly can about the programs that you're interested in online. So with many of the programs, there's a lot of information available online, including the core courses, so courses which you have to take to get that degree, but also the options that you're available that are available for you to take. Then the other things that you can do are to have a think about graduate destinations, and quite often staff will be able to answer about where their graduates end up going. And so it might be that actually you see your ideal job is listed as one of the graduate destinations when you contact the members of staff directly. The other thing is we have sort of general open days, which are mainly geared towards undergraduate students, but they do allow you to visit the university and have a look around at some of the facilities, and also that chance to one-on-one chat with staff. So that might be something that you do. Finally, if you really don't know, then just get in touch with the members of staff directly. So you should be able to see details of programme conveners available on the line, and the banner was on the screen a moment ago for the different programmes that we have on offer. And so if you get in touch with the programme conveners directly, they should be able to help. So I hope that helps a bit. I know it can be a really tricky situation. We sometimes people know, I want to do film curation and that's it, so they have a really clear idea of what they want to do. But sometimes it's a case of, well, I really like the sound of ancient cultures, but I like the sound of museum studies and of information management and preservation as well, and I don't quite know. So what is it that will help you decide? So it's about, I think, also thinking about your own priorities first. So I hope that helps a bit, Erin. But let us know if you have any further questions too. So now we've got a question from Sophia, which I'm going to ask Christina. So it's about the best resource you found the University of Glasgow offers for international students.
I think the best resource I've had has just been staff and lecturers who've been really willing to help. There are always going to be little differences that you're kind of surprised by, because you've gone through university, it worked one way, and then all of a sudden things are just a little different. Like, what does that word mean? What does that mean? And so every lecturer I've had has been willing to explain what they mean. They've even been willing to go above and beyond. My program has a lot of international students, and so we are struggling with some conventions for essay writing. So our course convener sat us all down and just kind of went through what she's expecting, what are the norms in this country compared to our own, our home countries, because they are sometimes just a little different. And we were all able to leave feeling much more, at least I felt much more equipped and okay, I understand, I know it's being asked of me. So really it was just the staff being willing to help and support us in a really positive way, and then point us where other resources we had.
Yeah, that's smashing, Christina. Thank you. And just on the screen just a moment ago, there was a banner giving you the link for support for international students. And it's really heartening actually to hear what Christina's saying about the staff, because I, in common with all of the colleagues I've ever spoken to about this, we love having international students on our programs, because you're bringing different experiences, different backgrounds, different contexts, which then we can use when we're delivering our program. So we love having international students. There is a lot of support available. So the support, if English is an additional language, so you are able to tap into extra support there. There's support from the student learning services as well, who can give you help in terms of assessment and essay writing and so on. So there's a lot of support available. So thanks very much. So we've got a question now, which I'm going to direct to Claire, which is from Aoife. So it's about the MLIS in creative writing. Are we given the opportunity to meet agents and publishers?
Yes, you are. But you're able to meet them constantly, which is one of the reasons that I joined the course, is that I wanted to learn about the editing and publication side of writing and just how the whole industry works. But all of the tutors that we have are published writers, are actively continuing to publish their work, and the university puts on different events that have different authors and different writers and different people working in agencies come and they talk about what they do, and they're just really transparent about it, and they tell us everything and they answer all of our questions, even what we think is a silly question. They're just so warm and lovely about it. So most weeks you get to meet somebody, and normally it's from a Scottish agency, or it can be from a small press, or it can be from a big press. You really meet people across the board, so you get a really good picture of what it could be if you write nonfiction or if you write poetry. So you meet people who specialize in different genres as well. So it's very varied.
Yeah, that's great, Claire. Thank you. And don't turn your microphone off, because I've got another follow-up question. This time from Hannah, who is from Aberdeen. Hi, Hannah. So she's interested in studying the MLit in creative writing online as she works full-time and wonders how the timetable operates and if the lectures are live or recorded. Can you help answer that a bit?
Yeah, all of the classes are live. Some of them are hybrid and some of them are not, but most of the classes, we have some of us in the room and then some people joining from online. And there are other classes that I know just take place online. And if you're studying part-time, I think you have the option to go fully online. And the other hybrid classes, you have the option whether to come in person or not. But it's still very well managed by the tutors, and that everybody who's online and everybody who's in person all feel like they are in the room together, and we all feel like we're working together. So it doesn't feel as weird as that sounds. And most of the classes take place in the afternoon and the evenings. So I have a class later today that starts at 5 o'clock. And that gives me time to do all of my work in the morning and all my reading in the morning, because there's a lot of reading to do just in your own time. You're expected to read at least a book a week, which I know sounds daunting, but sometimes it's a poetry book, which isn't as many pages, or it's a smaller book, but you're expected to do a lot of reading in your own time.
Yeah, that's great. But I suppose you're probably on the creative writing degree because you enjoyed reading and writing anyway. So hopefully it's not quite as bad as it might be. So that's smashing, Claire. Thank you. So now moving on to a question from Despina from London. So what's the student life like for postgraduates regarding age differences, finding friends, and so on? I'm going to go to Christina here, because I think you've had a sort of very particular but very good experience, have you?
Yeah, so I'm older than most of my classmates. I'm also married, so I'm in a different life stage, and that sounds kind of weird to say, but then a lot of my classmates who, some of whom are fresh out of undergrad, some of whom have had a few years outside of undergrad, they've been working, and it's kind of a mix. But for me, I'm on the older side of it. I've had no problem because you have so much in common. We have a lot of classes together. We're going through the same things with our dissertations. We're a small enough group that we all know each other. A lot of people like to go out after our core class once a week. We were doing that for a while. On the other hand, my husband is also a student here. He's a postgrad student as well. And in his program, even though he's my age, he's nowhere near the oldest. He has a lot of people who are older than him, a lot of people that are younger. So it will really depend on your cohort, on your program, where you end up. But nobody seems to think it's weird. There's one guy in my program who's probably decades older than everyone else. And it's just kind of what it is. It's not like undergrad where everyone's kind of the same age, give or take a few months. Everyone is kind of in their own different phase of life, and everyone's kind of gets along. There's not really any problems. It's been pretty easy making friends, I would say. A lot of it's just kind of, what are your interests? If your interest is in your program, you might spend a lot of time with people in your program just becoming friends naturally. I know other people who go and they join clubs, and that's how they make friends. There's a mature student union that you can join if you really want to be around people more your own age. So far, I think it's been pretty great, honestly.
Yeah, and we're very lucky in that we've got a really active, very vibrant social scene in the university, which is supported by the Student Representatives Council. So you see the banner at the bottom of the screen, then there's links to the organisations, the different clubs and societies, and just about anything that you can think of is covered there. So there are student societies relating to particular degrees or particular subjects like digital media and information studies, but also sports clubs like fencing and football and hockey, swimming, badminton, all of the sports that you can think of as well. And then lots of interest societies. Some of these are relating to students from particular parts of the world. So there's I think a Sri Lankan society, that sort of thing, or people interested in particular cultures. So they're all there as resources. But I think what many people find when they come to do postgraduate taught study is that really this is your tribe. So you're all here, you're interested, you're coming from different parts of the world, you're coming with different life experiences from different backgrounds, but you all have this common interest. So that it makes things a bit easier than it might otherwise do, or if you're joining a really large undergraduate program or really large cohort of undergraduate students. So I hope that's answered your question. Next, I'm going to go on to a question from Molly, which is about taught hours we can expect if you take a part-time degree. Molly has an offer from Museum Studies. Congratulations, Molly. That's a degree in my department. So I can answer specifically about part-time degrees for students in information studies. You would need to confirm, those of you who are taking a degree part-time elsewhere, you'd need to confirm with the programme convener exactly what the pattern was. But largely speaking, it's likely to be similar. So a part-time student would normally, in information studies, for that's museum studies or information management preservation, would normally be in 2 days a week, both semesters in their first year, 1 day a week in their second semester, in their second year, their second semester. Then they'll be writing their dissertation alongside if they're taking the master's programme. And that's broadly typical, I think. Is that your experience, Christina, Claire, Amelia? Do you know part-time students?
Yeah, there is a part-time student on my course, and she's taking, I think, one class. She's taking the core classes this year, and then she's going to do optional modules next year. And she has an option to either split the station throughout both years or just do it next year. I think she's going to do it next year, but she has a choice.
Yeah, so that's really helpful, Amelia. Thank you. And certainly as staff, we do our best to support our part-time students, but also for all students, we're fully aware that the days where students came to university and were able to just study have by and large gone. So many of our students have other very valid calls on their time too. So in terms of part-time work and so on. So if you're going to be studying the programme and you need a bit more detail about the timetable, then those details, at least in terms of the day and roughly speaking the times that different courses are going to be taught, would normally be available by the start of the summer. You might not have the rooms yet, but at least if you need that information so that you can just manage the way your life will be going forward, then please do get in touch and let us know. Okay, so there's a question from Erin, which I'm going to take now because I think this leads on quite nicely, and it's about workload as an international student. Since you believe the programme is a condensed 1 year full-time degree, a bit worried as an international student about the study-life balance. I think I'm not quite sure what programme you're talking about, Erin, but most of our master's programmes are just 1 year. There are 1 or 2 exceptions, and they're 1 year for home students and for international students. I think it's fair to say that there is a leap from undergraduate to taught postgraduate study. I'm seeing Christina at least nodding her, and the other two, Amelia and Claire, nodding their heads. So workload can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming, but that's why we're here as staff. You're only here for a few months actually in the classroom, only here for a year for your studies overall, including a research project. And so there's a lot that we have to get across in that year. one mistake I'd say people often make is they say, I'm here only for a year. I'm going to study, tunnel vision. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to concentrate on my study. I know I did that when I took my master's degree years ago. I think that's a mistake. I think that you study more effectively if you are able to take some time out to go to the beaches and to the mountains that Claire was talking about, to go for the walks around campus and in Glasgow's West End and elsewhere in Glasgow that Amelia and Christina have mentioned, to join the clubs and societies. So I think, yes, go into it with your eyes open. It will be hard work. However, there's still time to have fun, and you should make sure that you make time to have fun. And I hope that helps a bit, Erin. Okay, so Despina has asked something about potential for a part-time job if you're studying full-time. Many of our students do work, but you need to keep an eye on the number of hours a week. And so I think that's something to just be aware that if you're working and you're not able to study, it might be necessary in terms of money. In an ideal world, you just all have full student grants, but it can be a bit tricky. Okay, so Evelyn has asked about career prospects for the Ancient Cultures programme, and we have nicely timed at the bottom of the screen the U of G Careers Service banner at the bottom, and if there's any opportunities for placements and internships. So we have the careers banner there, but there's also an internships hub which is available, which has just by magic. So thank you to the people who are keeping a close eye on which questions we're answering when. So there's the internships hub, which is available in the banner at the bottom of the screen just now. And it's worth keeping your eye on those. So one of the things that I've been doing this week is actually interviewing for an internship, working on a university-wide project dealing with student voice, which has been really, really interesting, and just seeing the number of students who've applied for those opportunities. So do keep your eye on the placements and internships, and many courses in addition will have the opportunity for placements, either organised placements as part of the taught part of the course, or many programmes will also encourage you to think about your dissertation and doing something that might be practice-based for your dissertation. Okay, so there's a question from Nana, who is saying, please, what does it feel like to live and study in Glasgow? So I'm going to throw this across out to the students. I'm going to ask you first, Amelia, if you could answer this question. What does it feel like to live and study in Glasgow?
I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, I think it was quite a difference from my undergrad, because I did my undergrad and moved straight to my postgrad. So there was definitely way more kind of individual work that I had to adjust to. But I feel like there's so much happening in Glasgow, and everyone's so friendly that it's quite easy to balance between studying and kind of having a good time as well. It's definitely really cold. That's something I didn't expect. So I feel like the weather is something to keep in mind when you move to Glasgow. Yeah, I lived in Newcastle before. I thought it's going to be similar, and it's way colder. So that's the one thing that took me by surprise. But other than the weather, it's a great city to be in. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Glasgow as a city, but the weather can be a bit of a shock. I lived in Aberdeen for a few years before I moved to Glasgow. And I assume, people in Aberdeen would say, oh, the weather in Glasgow is very wet. And I didn't really believe it would be that much worse than Aberdeen. But yeah, it really is. It's really, really rainy. Not cold compared to Aberdeen, but certainly it's very rainy compared to Aberdeen. Okay, so now I'll ask the same question about what it's like living and studying in Glasgow. I'm going to ask Christina.
Yeah, I'd really second the thing about the weather. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so I thought, I know rain. It rains almost every day in the Pacific Northwest, and it is worse here, and it gets dark really early in the winter. So those are things that I was not as prepared for, but they all are manageable. Like my dad always says, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. And so I found that to be true. Like, okay, I'll wear my waterproof clothes, and people have umbrellas, and most people don't seem to be stopped by the weather. You'll still see people outside with their kids, walking their dogs, going to like the different parks around town. When it's a clear day, you see a lot more people, but you still see quite a lot of people just like living their lives. So it is nice that people aren't like stopped by the weather. I would say it's a pretty easy city to like navigate. I always feel really safe. You see people like out at night without any problems. It's easy to get from place to place thanks to the subway and the different public transportation. It is nice being on a train line that can take you basically anywhere you want to go in the country. You're really close to like different parts of nature. You're close to castles. So there's a lot to do. And it is a pretty, I think, easy place to live. I live in the West End, and there's grocery stores nearby. There's restaurants nearby. I don't really have to leave like my neighborhood if I don't want to. So it's really, I found it to be a very like livable city. It's very easy to live here.
Yeah, that's smashing. Thank you. I'm going to come back to the point about the subway in a moment, but I want to go to Claire next to ask about the best bits of Glasgow working and studying.
Well, I want to second what everybody else said. And yeah, just get some waterproof boots and a waterproof coat and you'll be fine. If you like coffee shops and you like aesthetic places to go and hang out and chill, Glasgow is definitely the place for that. Glasgow kind of prides itself on its local indie coffee shops and indie bakeries, and you'll be spoiled for choice for places. And I also find that people are just so friendly. And I think if you're not from Glasgow, you're almost more likely to make friends because people will hear you speak and then they'll be like, oh, where are you from? What brings you to Glasgow? And strangers are just quite happy to chat to each other and get chatting at the bus stop and things. So I've mostly had very positive experiences. I know Glasgow in the past has had like a rougher reputation, and I think those areas do still exist, but they're not as common as they once were. Overall, it's a very friendly city, and I think you have to learn how to have a positive attitude if you live in such a wet area.
Yeah. I mean, I came to Glasgow many years ago and obviously have not really left. So I love Glasgow. And you're right, standing at the bus stop, you'll get somebody's life story. You ask for directions, you'll get taken there, whether it's on the person's way or not. So Glasgow is a wonderful, friendly city. Which is bringing me to a bit of a controversial question, I have to say. And I don't know if Christina, Clara and Amelia have seen this in the chat, but weighing up between Glasgow and Edinburgh, what kind of person would you say is best suited to each city and why? And I'm not quite sure how we can answer this without offending our Edinburgh colleagues. Edinburgh is a beautiful city. And Edinburgh also has lots of really interesting museums and galleries and lots of exciting places to go and a thriving arts and culture scene. Having lived in Glasgow and loved it, I think I might find it a bit difficult to live in Edinburgh. But Christina and Amelia and Claire, either do any of you live in Edinburgh or do any of you have friends either on the course that you're on or at university or other friends who live in Edinburgh? So Claire.
I've never lived in Edinburgh, but I spend a lot of time there actually for work, and the Fringe is on in the summer, and so normally I'm living there for the whole of August, which feels very different to what normal Edinburgh would be like the rest of the year. But I love Edinburgh and I love it as my place to visit. You can happily get lost there because it's all little nooks and crannies of these beautiful cobblestone streets, whereas Glasgow is on a grid system in the city centre, so it's quite easy. You either go left or right and you'll know where you are. But Edinburgh's got that old ancient city sort of feel, and it does feel like a much smaller city than Glasgow does. And I think you're more likely to walk. From people I know who lived in Edinburgh, they tell me that they walk down the street and they constantly bump into people that they know, whereas Glasgow's a bit bigger, so you might not get that exactly. But apart from that, they both have really good arts and cultures. I would say it's just a case of whether you'd rather live in a smaller ancient city or more of a cosmopolitan style city.
Yeah, that's great. And certainly if you really love Edinburgh, if you've got friends who live in Edinburgh or you can find accommodation in Edinburgh quite easily, then that's you know, it's fine. We always get people who commute, and because the way we try to timetable, where we're looking at specific days, so blocks within days rather than across the piece, it doesn't always work, but that's certainly how many of us try to timetable our classes. Then I think if you prefer Edinburgh, then you can live in Edinburgh and you can commute through. So that's great. On the train, it takes you just less than an hour to go from the centre of Edinburgh to the centre of Glasgow. So it's quite easily commutable. Okay, so now I just want to go on a bit of a tangent, I think, and perhaps develop a bit on what we were talking about a few moments ago in terms of the coffee shops and the best bits to do in Glasgow. We spoke a lot about the rain, and certainly yesterday there was 0% chance of rain. I'm looking out my window now, but today there are a few clouds in the sky. So what are your best things to do in Glasgow if it rains? I think mine are probably going to the Kelvin Grove Art Museum, which is the galleries in the museum, which are literally about 10 minutes walk from my office. My office is quite central in campus, just right on the edge of campus. So it's even closer for some people, depending on where you're based. And I just love looking around. They have a really large sort of permanent exhibition, but they also have really interesting temporary exhibitions. So it's a few years ago now, but the Kylie exhibition there was amazing. I don't think any of you three will have been in Glasgow when the Kylie exhibition was on, but it was really good. Kylie's hot pants were tiny though, really small. But I love going to Kelvin Grove. What are your favourite things to do if the weather isn't quite as good? I'll go with Amelia first.
Yeah, I can just say there's a lot of good cinemas. If you like films, there's so many different cinemas to pick from. There is the Glasgow Film Theatre, which is probably the nicest, I think. So that's more like an indie kind of independent film cinema. There is the Cineworld as well, which is huge if you want to like go for a multiplex as well. It's like several floors as well. It's the biggest cinema I've ever seen in my life. So it's quite nice to go as well because there's a nice view from the top of it. Then there is the Ashton Lane Cinema as well, which is quite kind of looks very beautifully, very kind of like vintage seats, and you can get a drink or popcorn as well in. So it's very nice. I think there's Everyman as well. So there's a lot of cinemas, and there's also cinemas in galleries as well. I think CCA has a cinema as well. So if you like watching films, that's the best way to hide from rain. I think for 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, we should know our film creation student would answer with that. I don't know if they did it last Christmas because I didn't have the chance to check, but in the past, one of my best things to do, I know some student groups have organised trips there, is going to the Glasgow Film Theatre, the GFT, because they show It's a Wonderful Life coming up to Christmas and other really nostalgic old Christmas films as well. So it's not just the cutting edge art house films, but yeah, that sort of scene is really, really good in Glasgow. So Christina, what are your favourite things to do when it rains?
I mean, I love the rain, to be honest. I will say it does sometimes get to be a bit much for me. But I do find it really cozy to have like a nice cup of tea, to just sit by the window. I don't know, there's something relaxing about it. So sometimes I'll just enjoy the ambiance, but I also really like going to the botanical gardens. It's a nice way to kind of still get to be, it feels like outside, you're inside, it's covered, you know, they have all these different like regions that they have represented. You know, you can walk through the desert wing and pretend it's warm and sunny, or go through the tropical plants. And I find it really nice because it's giving me the illusion of being outside in nature, but I'm dry, I'm warm, I'm comfortable. So I think it's a good mix.
Yeah, yeah, I really like the Botanic Gardens, and sometimes it's really nice just to take my lunch up there because it's quite close to campus. So that's a really nice way of just getting away from the computer screen for a wee bit. So we've mentioned coffee shops and botanics and museums and art galleries. We haven't actually mentioned the university's own museum and art gallery. And I think my colleagues who I work quite closely with would not be happy at that. So just a big shout out to the Hunterian Museum and the Hunterian Art Gallery. And thank you very much. The link is at the bottom of the screen. And again, they have their sort of permanent exhibitions, but also they have some really interesting temporary exhibitions. So they change throughout the year. They also have lunchtime talks from staff and sometimes from students too. So those lunchtime talks happen sort of periodically throughout the year, quite often in term time. So they're worth keeping an eye open. And often members of staff will alert you if there's something that's of particular interest to the degree programme that you're on. So yeah, I love going to the Hunterian too. We've got lots of different museums on campus. So it's not just the main Hunterian Museum and the main art gallery. We've got the Zoology Museum, which contains some live exhibits as well. There's Anatomy Museum and various different places where you can go if you're interested in collections and collecting, which is not just our museum studies students, but also ancient cultures. Now, when we first met Christina, you're telling me a bit about some work that you'd done with the Hunterian. Do you want to share that on the call now? As part of your ancient cultures course?
Yeah, one of the really great things about the Ancient Cultures program is that you have a lot of different opportunities to do like hands-on learning. And they also really, really value us taking advantage of any opportunity we can or making our own. And so our program does a lot of handling sessions with the materials in the archives, where we get to go and actually handle like real like ancient things. Like we have these things from Egypt that we get to handle, or we get to handle like pottery from ancient Greece and learn about it. But one of the really cool things is our program is closely connected with the numismatics department. And so a handful of us volunteer every week. We like basically, there's a huge collection of coins and medals that the Hunterian has that William Hunter collected. That's where Hunterian gets its name. And they're not all cataloged, they're not all digitized. So we go through and we handle all these ancient coins, we take photos, we describe them. We do research to make sure the information we have is accurate, and then they go on the Hunterian website for future researchers to use. But it's this really great opportunity. Like we've learned so much about coins. Me and my 3 classmates who participate, we've learned about like history that we never would have thought about otherwise. We've learned about like how coins work as like these political messages. It's a really cool experience. It's really great. It's really cool that it's so hands-on. So just like hold a coin that has Alexander the Great's face on it. It's just phenomenal. It's just one of those experiences that like every week we're like, is this real? Are we actually doing this? And we are. It's this really, really phenomenal, really fantastic experience that really would not be possible if the university wasn't so invested in students actually having experience in the fields they're going into. Because we could just look at pictures, but like it's above and beyond in my mind.
Yeah, and I think one of the best bits of my job, because I teach on our Archives Records Information Management program, so I convene that program. That's the MSc in Information Management and Preservation. I also contribute to the sister program of Museum Studies, and we work really closely with archives, special collections, the library, the museum, and these are often professional preparation programs. So students are taking these programs because they want to go and work in these fields. And I don't think it's possible, and it's certainly not desirable, to only find out about the theory from the books. Actually being able to get your hands dirty and to see the way it works in practice is really good. And now quick shout out to the library and also to Archives and Special Collections, because I know that they do sterling work with people from many, many different programs. And you can see the link at the bottom of the screen there. So thank you very much. Okay, so going back to a few more of your questions. So Victoria, this one's been sitting there for a while. I'm sorry, I kept almost getting to it and not quite. So Victoria is looking at the MLit in art history and wanting to explore the academic realm that art history provides, wondering if there's any teaching assistant prospect within the programme. Okay, so I think a couple of different points from that question. So first of all, if you're interested in going further in academia, then across all of the taught postgraduate programs, then within each department or subject area, there'll be a member of staff with responsibility for what can happen next if you're interested in staying in study. So if you want to do a research degree, so perhaps an MRes, or even a PhD. And so there'll be a dedicated member of staff within each subject area that you can talk to. But actually, I quite often get asked by current students, I'm interested in doing a PhD. Can you help me? Can you talk me through the process? And we're always really happy to do that if any of you are interested in staying on. And there's information available again about research opportunities and research study, how to apply for research study, available on our website. But you will come across that when you're here as a taught postgraduate student too. In terms of teaching assistant prospects, often these are quite difficult, and if there are any, then there'd be very few of them, and so it's difficult to answer about whether there's any available in history of art as a subject area. There might be or there might not be, but those that are, it's likely to be not very many hours and for quite a short space of time. However, members of staff will be able to advise when you're here. But if you're interested in part-time work, then your best bet is to look at the internship hub that we mentioned earlier, and about what roles are available on the internship hub. And you can see across the bottom of the screen. Thank you again, the people who are Fasia, who's putting these up. Thank you again for putting these up so timely. So you can see results about the internship hub there. So I hope that answers your question. A question now from Megan, wanting to apply for a master's programme in 2025. Can you apply sooner rather than later, or applications only open the year that they're happening? You could possibly apply this year, but you'd have to apply for entry this year and then defer until next year. And I wouldn't recommend doing that, because you're only able to defer a certain number of times automatically. So you can automatically defer, I think, twice, and then it has to go to the people within the subject who have to approve or not approve your deferral. And secondly, if you apply now rather than applying next year for entry next year, then the programme might have changed in the meantime, so it might not be what you're looking to do. So I'd say hold off, but if you find that you apply and you can no longer come, you can defer. So that is a possibility, but I'd say it's probably best to apply for the year that you want to come in. A question now from Grace about whether it's difficult to get into the course that we wanted. I think look at the entry requirements and see if you meet them. If you meet the entry requirements and you apply early enough, then you should get a place. But it's how well you're able to demonstrate that you meet those entry requirements. So I'd say definitely have a look at what they say is needed, and sometimes it's a degree in any relevant subject. I wish they'd take the relevant out, because quite often that, pretty much any subject could be relevant for many degrees. Sometimes you might need to have a degree in a particular undergraduate subject area to do a particular type of master's. So you might find that you need to do a conversion course in, for example, philosophy, rather than just a straightforward philosophy course if you don't have a philosophy first degree, for example. So it's worth looking at that. Some courses ask for personal statements. So if they ask for a personal statement, just write one. It doesn't have to be really long, and it doesn't have to be really academic, and it doesn't have to include academic references unless that's appropriate. But just put a personal statement if the course asks for one, and that's your chance to explain why you are right for the course and why the course is right for you. So generally speaking, as long as you've got the prior qualifications, then it should be fine. Some courses do have caps, like an upper limit of numbers, and if that's the case, then apply as early as you can. Okay, there's a sort of follow-up question to the last one that we looked at, where from Kiran, asking about finding any sort of job on the campus. There are some jobs available on the campus, and again, looking at the internship hub is probably one of the places that you can find information on that. But there's also jobs available in catering, the catering services on campus, in the library, perhaps as reshelvers. I know former students I've had in the past have worked for the Hunterian Museum and the Art Gallery as attendants, like the assistants that are there to give help when people come in. Amelia and Christina and Claire, do any of you have jobs, part-time work? Okay, so So Amelia?
Yeah, I just work part-time on the bars, so it's not really a campus job, but yeah, I think it's working part-time is doable, but you definitely need to watch out for amount of hour you take on. At the moment, I do up to like 20, 25, but I did a bit more in December, and that was definitely too much. But it's very individual, and kind of just make sure to kind of negotiate with your employer about how many hours you can do, and yeah, kind of ask for flexibility if you have assessment coming up, or yeah, I just need some more time to focus on your studies.
Yeah, so forward planning in terms of mapping your assessment deadlines and making sure that work doesn't mess with that. Claire, do you have a job?
Yes, I teach English as an additional language, and I teach that to children, and which is a great job, and I love it. I also do it online, which means sometimes I can go to campus and I can teach before going to my class, or I tend to work from home, and I only teach in the mornings, and probably only do about 15 hours a week. But I would echo what Amelia said, that it just really depends what your workload is on the course and how you're managing that. And my work know that I'm studying and that's the priority. So occasionally I've had to cancel or reschedule a lesson because something to do with university has come up, and I'm really, really fortunate that my employers are very understanding of that. But most employers will be, especially like I used to work in a cafe and they were so accommodating for my studies. And most places are, if you're upfront, if you're not working on campus and you're upfront from the start that you're also a student, they're used to hiring students. There's a lot of us in Glasgow, so most employers will be very accommodating.
Yeah, and I think that's it. There's jobs that are available on campus, but also because the campus is not far from the city centre and is surrounded by these coffee shops and the restaurants and the cafes and everything else that we've spoken about today, then many students do manage to pick up a job, even just on a such short number of contracted hours a week. Now we're going to go through accommodation. There's a question, could you talk us through accommodation, best places to live and the ease of finding a room? Yes, so there are various different ways to find student accommodation in Glasgow. So the University of Glasgow has a student accommodation site, so you can look there at what there is available. But also there are a number of different private providers who offer accommodation in this area of the city. So Christina, you're actually in a special sort of accommodation, aren't you? You're in family quarters.
Yeah, so because I'm married, me and my husband, wanted to share an accommodation, and we were like, the university has I'm not sure how many, I would say like a handful of family accommodations. So this for people with like just couples, or it's for families with kids. And we live in university accommodation, but we have like a full flat for just the two of us. The location's phenomenal. We're probably less than 5 minutes from the library, so we have no excuse not to study. It's really great. It's a pretty nice place, and it's really nice to have it be managed through the university, because I can actually like trust the landlords. When I have a problem, I know that they're going to take care of it, that they care about me. It's always like really quick responses, and I've had landlords in the past who, I don't know, I think they just saw me as like a dollar sign and didn't care at all. And that's just not the case with the student accommodations at all.
Yeah, so Amelia and Clara, either of the other of you in student accommodation? Are you in private accommodation?
I'm in private accommodation, but that's also because I lived in Glasgow for a couple of years before coming to university. So I've just stayed where I am. And that was a shared accommodation, which I found online. And I've had a really good experience from it, and I got really lucky with it. But also, I think most private accommodations, I'm not quite sure, you can correct me, Adele, on the law. The law of housing is different in Scotland, so you can leave a lot sooner if you've moved into private accommodation and you think, oh, this isn't what I expected, and you're not locked in for a year necessarily.
Yeah. So it's different as I understand it in England, and I haven't rented in England for a long time, but in England, if you sign up for a year's contract, then you're pretty much tied into that. Whereas in Scotland, you can give a month's notice. Even if the contract says a year, then the law is that you can give a month's notice. So I think that's really good in terms of if you have a really nice flat in a great area, you're going to want to stay there. But if it's not so nice, or the landlord isn't responsive to anything that goes wrong, then you can leave. There's an accommodation question and answer session at 2 p.m. today. So you'll find the details of that in the same place that you found the details for this. So if you have any specific accommodation questions, then you can go along to that accommodation question and answer. But it's worth pointing out, the university is in the West End of Glasgow. The West End itself has got lots of student accommodation. Both the university owns the private blocks of student accommodation, but also individual landlord-owned accommodation. The West End tends to be a wee bit more expensive than other areas of the city. So it's worth having a look around. So we mentioned the subway, and I did say I'd come back to the subway, and now I can't remember who it was that mentioned getting on the subway. I think it might have been you, Amelia, talking about getting around to the different cinemas. But the subway is amazing in Glasgow. So yeah, so what do you use the subway to do?
So I live like 30 minutes from the campus, maybe 40, depending where I have my class. So on the sunny days, I do try to walk if it's warm enough. And then if it's raining, or I just don't feel like walking, or I'm running a bit late, I will jump on a subway, and I think it takes like less than 10 minutes to actually go from the subway to campus. So that's a big difference for me. Yeah, no, but it's so easy to get on as well. It's just 2 lines. So yeah, not very confusing, very straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, so the subway is amazing because it's just a circle, so it's known colloquially as the Clockwork Orange. So if you get on the wrong line, it doesn't matter, because if you just stay on, you'll get to the stop that you want to eventually anyway. And the subway goes through the city centre to the West End and down to the south side of Glasgow. And it's one of the, I use the subway most days when I come in. I don't live in Glasgow itself anymore. I did for a few years. Yeah, and you can see the link for the travel with the subway, but the subway is just an amazing resource that we have in Glasgow. They have new trains, but I've not seen a new train yet, despite travelling on it nearly every day. So I'm hoping I'll see one of the new trains that they have quite soon, because they're supposed to be really nice and quite quiet. But most, many people will end up living sort of in the outskirts of Glasgow, a little bit further out. And so I tend to get the train in and then the subway. But if I want to walk, if it's a nice day, it doesn't take me long to walk from the city centre at all. So you're probably talking about 20 minutes. I'm quite a fast walker. Would 20 minutes be about right, do you think? Yeah. But so it's not that much longer than taking the subway, but the subway's great. I really love the subway. But we've got really good transport links in Glasgow, which include ferries as well. So shout out to Calmac. So Claire was mentioning being able to go to the beach and everything, but you can get to the islands really quite easily if you go from Glasgow too, and just hop on a ferry and go somewhere different. So we've got the pages, the link at the bottom, more about Scotland. So that's great, and I hope that you find sort of much more targeted information from the accommodation FAQ. We've just got, I think, 6 or 7 minutes scheduled of this chat now. So now's the time for any last questions to put them in the chat. A question kept appearing for me and then disappearing, so I haven't answered it yet, but it was about swimming pools. So Glasgow's sport and leisure scene is actually really, really good. So the university itself has got a sports centre, the Stevie, and they have a swimming pool in that, but also there's weight rooms and there's gym classes and all sorts of things. There's another independent swimming pool, which is just like literally just a stone's throw from where I'm sitting on campus, which is called the Western Baths. Is that right? Has anyone been? I walk past it a lot, but there's an independent sort of old Victorian style swimming pool, which is really, really close. And there's lots of Glasgow City Council owned facilities as well. So there are, if slides and flumes are your thing, then there's some of those in Glasgow and the surrounding area. There are what my teenage children tell me are great slides and flumes at the pool at Greenock. So Greenock is just, if you got the train, it would take you about an hour from the centre to just go out towards the coast, just go out west. Greenock also has an amazing outdoor swimming pool. So if you're interested in swimming outside, if you're brave enough, then Greenock is the place to go. Also, lots of people do go wild swimming. I've got a colleague who goes wild swimming and sends photographs to our staff chat group of her wild swimming adventures. I'm not quite brave enough to do that, but my colleague does. So swimming pools, whoever it was that asked that question, because the question has disappeared for me just now, so I can't see it, but whoever asked the question, yes, there's lots and lots of swimming pools, including one right on campus and one right next to campus. So if swimming is your thing, then that's grand. You'll be able to continue with your swimming. So I think I've answered, I'm just looking through the list of questions now. Hopefully I've answered most of the questions now that you might have had. Please do let me know if there's anything else, or if you have any final last minute questions for Amelia, for Christina, or for Claire. No, well, in that case, what I would like to do is I'd like to end with top tips from our students. So do you have any top tips, something that you wish you'd known before you started the program that you're on? I'm going to go to Christina first. What are your top tips, Christina?
I think one of the things I quickly realized is that it's so important to take initiative when you're a postgraduate student. When you're an undergraduate student, you can kind of float through, your professors will kind of guide you a bit more. And it's not that they won't help you here, but you have to ask for it. And if you want an opportunity, you have to go for it. And you have such a short window. You have 4 years. You can take your time when you're an undergrad. But when you're a master's student, like, you have 1 year. And so really, like, put yourself out there, try for things, apply for things, talk to your professors and your lecturers, and it'll be really great. Like, opportunities will start coming, and you'll learn and you'll get the help you need, and it'll really be able to make the most of the short year that you have.
Yeah, that's great. Amelia, do you have any top tips?
I think plan your work ahead. I think that's what makes it way easier if you kind of have a look at assessments as soon as you start a semester and kind of put it down in the calendar and plan, I'm going to do research in this window of time, I'm going to write in this window of time, I'm going to edit later. So you're kind of on top of your work. So yeah, so it just doesn't kind of surprise you a week before a deadline that you have 3,000 words to write. Yeah, that's definitely my best tip for university in general. Just plan ahead, and then it's just way more peaceful as well. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. And finally, Claire. Sorry, coming to you last, Claire, when probably Christina and Amelia have stolen the ones you were going to use. But any top tips you have?
I would say take advantage of the library whilst you're here, because the library has. I've borrowed so many books that aren't even relevant to my course, but I just saw them in the library and had access to them for the first time. And I thought, I'm reading this. I don't think I'll quite get through my to-read list until the end of my course. But take advantage of that. And like everybody said, your tutors are there to help you. They're really lovely. They want you to succeed. And so get to know them and take every opportunity that comes.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really, really pleased that the three of you have joined us on this chat today. And thank you so much to everybody for some really interesting, but sometimes quite difficult questions. I hope that we answered them all. If not, then you'll have the contact details of the people you can get in touch with. We really hope that we'll see all of you in Glasgow over in September. Let us know if there's anything else that we can do for you. And thank you very much for coming along today. Thank you very much. Bye.